I always thought heartbreak would sound like shattering glass. Loud, sudden, final. But when I saw my wife's car parked crooked in our driveway, with another man's jacket hanging out the window, it was quiet, too quiet. I remember standing there, groceries still in my hands, the paper bag tearing just enough to drop a carton of eggs onto the asphalt. The yolk spilled out, bright, messy, fragile, kind of like how my life felt at that moment. Her name was Emily. We'd been married for 10 years, met in college, built a little life together in the suburbs of Portland. We had a small 2-story house, a golden retriever named Milo, and this habit of leaving small love notes on the fridge. Just little things: "You're my favorite person. Don't forget your umbrella." It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Or at least I thought it was. When I walked up the driveway, I heard laughter, hers, that soft, melodic laugh I used to live for. It was followed by a man's voice, deep, confident, and then the sound of a kiss. I froze. I didn't barge in, didn't yell, didn't even breathe. I just listened, because part of me didn't believe it was real. I kept thinking, there's no way. Not Emily, she wouldn't. But when I stepped around the front of the car, I saw her in his arms, her hand tangled in his hair, her lips on his, the same lips that used to whisper goodnight to me. That's when everything stopped. She turned and saw me. Her face went pale, and for a split second I saw guilt, but not the kind that comes from love. It was the kind that comes from getting caught. "Mark," she whispered, like saying my name would undo it. The guy, Ethan, I'd later learn, stepped back. He had that casual arrogance, like he was already used to being the better option. He didn't even apologize, just smirked slightly and said, "Didn't know you'd be home this early." I remember blinking, trying to understand how someone could sound that calm while standing in another man's driveway with his wife in his arms. Emily stammered, "Mark, this isn't." But I didn't want her excuses. I turned and walked inside. Every step felt heavy, like my body was moving through water. Milo wagged his tail when I entered, his tail thumping the wall, waiting for the usual "hey, buddy." But all I could do was sink onto the couch and stare at the family photos on the mantel. Us at the beach, her graduation, our wedding day, all of it snapshots of a lie I hadn't realized I was living in. She came in minutes later, mascara smudged, voice trembling. "Mark, please just listen." I held up my hand. "Don't." She stopped mid-sentence. There was a long silence, the kind that hurts your ears. Then I said quietly, "How long?" Her lip quivered. 3 months. 3 months, that meant Christmas. That meant the night we watched snow fall and promised each other we'd travel more this year. That meant the morning she kissed me goodbye and said she was meeting Sarah for coffee. I felt something inside me split. She started crying harder, babbling through the tears. "I didn't plan it, Mark. I swear I didn't. I felt unseen, like you were drifting away," and he listened. I wanted to scream. To tell her I was listening, that I'd been trying, that I still loved her. But what came out instead was this strange, quiet laugh, half disbelief, half pain. "Unseen," I repeated. "Emily, I've spent my whole damn life making sure you never felt invisible." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. That's when something changed in her face. It wasn't sorrow anymore. It was defensiveness, like she had to justify it. "You were distant, Mark. You barely looked at me anymore. I needed something real, something alive." The irony of her saying that while still wearing her wedding ring hit harder than any slap could. I took a deep breath, trying to hold myself together. "So this is how you fix that, by destroying us." She flinched. "I didn't want to hurt you." "You just didn't want to get caught," I said softly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy, full of words we could never unsay. Then she whispered, "I think I should go." I nodded, numb. "Yeah, I think you should." She hesitated, maybe waiting for me to stop her. I didn't. When she walked out the door, Milo followed her halfway, whining. Then he turned back to me, confused, tail still wagging uncertainly. That night, I sat in the dark living room for hours, listening to the clock tick. Every sound, the refrigerator hum, the rain tapping against the windows, felt louder than usual, like the world was reminding me it was still turning, even if mine had stopped. And then, sometime past midnight, I noticed the small bouquet of roses I'd bought earlier that day, still sitting on the counter. They were meant for her, a random surprise, just because I loved her. I stared at them for a long time before pulling out a piece of paper and a pen. I didn't know what I was going to write yet, but I knew it would be the last thing I'd ever say to her as her husband. And when I was done, she would never forget it. The morning after she left, the house felt like a museum. Still, cold. Every room held echoes of a life that no longer existed. Her mug was still on the kitchen counter, half full of coffee that had gone cold. Her hair tie sat by the sink. And on the fridge, the last note she'd written to me, still hung by a magnet shaped like a tiny heart. It said, "Don't forget to pick up dog treats. Love you." 2 lies and 8 words. For the next few days, I went through motions: work, sleep, repeat. People at the office noticed something was off. They asked if everything was okay. I lied, said I was just tired. Because how do you tell people your wife walked out and left your heart bleeding on the driveway? At night, I'd sit in the dark living room, Milo's head on my knee, replaying that moment over and over, the look on her face when she saw me, the way his hand was still on her waist. It was like my brain was trying to make sense of something senseless. Then came the silence, that kind of silence that eats at you. You start hearing everything, the hum of the air conditioner, the creak of the floorboards, and you realize you're not just hearing the house. You're hearing your own loneliness echoing back. 3 weeks later, I got my first reminder that she'd moved on. A mutual friend sent me a text. "Hey, I just saw Emily downtown. She looked happy. She was with someone." I didn't ask who, I already knew. Ethan. I remember scrolling through my phone, opening social media even though I swore I wouldn't, and there it was, a photo. Emily laughing in a restaurant booth, hand on her glass of wine, his arm around her shoulder. Caption: "Good times with good people." Good people, yeah, I didn't cry that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up, trying to understand how love could turn into something so cruelly unfamiliar. A month passed, then 2. The pain didn't disappear, it just changed shape. At first, it felt like a stab, sharp, constant. Then it became more like a dull ache, something you carry without realizing until you sit too still. Sometimes, I'd catch myself setting the table for 2. Other times, I'd find her favorite blanket folded neatly on the couch and feel that instinctive pull, that hope she might walk through the door again. She never did, but life, stubborn as it is, keeps moving. Bills still come. Work still calls, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to live again. I began going on runs after work, something I hadn't done in years, started cooking real meals instead of takeout. Milo and I became this strange little team, just 2 guys trying to figure out life after being abandoned. And somewhere in that quiet routine, I started finding myself again. Then one night, about 3 months after she left, I got an email from her. Just the subject line was enough to make my chest tighten. "Can we talk?" For a long minute, I didn't move, didn't open it, didn't breathe. When I finally clicked, her message was short. "Hey Mark, I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I hope you're doing okay. I miss Milo. I hope you're both happy." That last word, happy, hit harder than the rest, because I wasn't, not yet, but at least I wasn't broken anymore. I didn't reply, not out of anger, just peace, because sometimes silence says everything. But life has a funny way of circling back when you least expect it. 2 weeks after that email, I ran into her. At a grocery store of all places, the same one where I'd bought those roses months ago. She looked different, thinner, tired. Her hair was tied back, and her eyes, the same green eyes I used to get lost in, looked dim. "Hey," she said softly. I managed a nod. "Hey." We stood there for a long, awkward moment near the frozen food aisle. She smiled weakly. "You look good." "You don't," I almost said, but I didn't. Instead, I just asked, "How are you?" Her eyes flickered. "I'm figuring things out." I didn't press, but then she added, almost whispering, "Ethan and I, we're not together anymore." I just nodded. Didn't gloat, didn't smile, just listened. She was trembling. He wasn't what I thought he was. I made a mistake. Hearing that should have satisfied me. It didn't. All it did was confirm what I already knew, that betrayal doesn't end when they leave. It echoes for both of you. Before she walked away, she said, "I hope you can forgive me someday." I told her I already did. And I meant it, even if part of me still ached. When I got home that night, I found the letter I'd written the day she left, the one I never sent. It was tucked inside a book I hadn't opened since. The paper had yellowed a little around the edges, but the words were still there. In reading them, I realized something. I'd written it out of love, not revenge. It said, "Emily, I don't hate you. I hate what you did, but I hope you find whatever it is you're searching for. Just know when it breaks you, I won't be there to fix it." At the time, I thought it was closure. But standing there, holding that letter, I realized closure isn't something you find. It's something you decide. I folded it carefully, placed it in an envelope, and wrote one word on the front: return. I didn't know then how literal that word would become, because 2 weeks later, she came back. It happened on a Thursday night, rain against the windows. Soft thunder rolling somewhere in the distance. I'd just finished dinner, leftovers and silence, when I heard a knock on the door. 3 knocks, hesitant, familiar. Milo barked once, tail wagging like he already knew. When I opened the door, she was standing there. Emily. Her hair was soaked, makeup streaked, hands trembling as she clutched her coat tight around her. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain hitting the porch roof. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Mark, can I come in?" I didn't answer, I just stepped aside. She walked in slowly, eyes scanning the house like she was seeing ghosts. Everything was the same, the couch, the photos, the faint scent of cedar and coffee, yet everything had changed. When she turned to face me, her voice broke. I didn't know where else to go. I nodded once, "Sit." She sank onto the couch, her shoulders trembling. I stayed standing, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. For a moment, we just existed. The silence between us was heavier than words could ever be. Then she said it, the words I'd imagined, dreaded, maybe even needed to hear. He cheated on me. Her voice cracked, tears spilled down her face. And I felt this strange ache, not satisfaction, not vengeance, just sadness. I asked quietly, "With who?" She shook her head, "Someone from his office. I caught them last week." I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, out of disbelief at the symmetry of it all. Karma doesn't always come with thunder and lightning. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wearing your own reflection. She looked up at me through swollen eyes. I deserved it, didn't I? I didn't answer because yes, she did, but hearing her say it out loud didn't feel like justice. It just hurt. After a long silence, she whispered, "I thought leaving you would make me happy. I thought he was everything I was missing, but he wasn't you, Mark. He never was." Her voice cracked again, and she started crying harder. I ruined everything. I broke the one person who actually loved me. I sat down across from her. For a while, I just watched her cry, the same woman who once promised me forever, now breaking in front of me. "Why are you here?" I asked finally. She looked at me, eyes pleading. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. About us, about what I threw away." There was a part of me, the part that still remembered her laugh, her warmth, her scent, that wanted to reach out to hold her. But there was another part, the one that spent nights alone, staring at empty pillows, that couldn't forget what she'd done. I said quietly, "Emily, when you left, I thought I'd never breathe again. Every night, I begged the universe to give me one more chance to understand why. And now that you're here, I'm not sure I want the answer anymore." She covered her face with her hands. "I know you don't owe me anything. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry people say to feel better. The kind that sits in your stomach and eats you alive." Her voice trembled. "I wake up every morning and check my phone, hoping you've texted me. I drive past our house and cry in the car. I think about Milo. I think about the way you used to look at me when you didn't even know you were smiling." A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I didn't want to cry, but grief has its own timing. I asked softly, "Did he ever love you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I think he just loved winning." That sentence hung in the air. And I realized maybe she finally understood what she'd lost. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured her a cup of tea. She looked at it like it was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in months. For a while we sat there in silence. No fighting, no yelling, just silence. Then she whispered, "Is there any way we could try again?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the man I was before all this, the one who would have said yes in a heartbeat. And then I thought about the man I'd become, the one who learned peace the hard way. After a long pause, I said, "You can stay, but just for tonight." Her eyes softened with something between gratitude and sorrow. She nodded. "Thank you." I made up the guest room for her, fresh sheets, a blanket, a glass of water on the nightstand. When she walked in, she stopped at the doorway, tears glistening under the dim light. "You still take care of people, even the ones who don't deserve it," she said softly. I didn't reply, just gave a quiet nod and walked away. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass, listening to the house breathe again. Somewhere down the hall, I could hear her crying quietly, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel anger, just a kind of exhausted compassion. Because the truth is, love doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it just changes shape from warmth to pain to understanding. Before I went to bed, I whispered to the empty room, "I forgive you, Emily, but I can't be yours again." And even though she couldn't hear it, I think she knew. I woke before the sun. The house was quiet again, that same kind of stillness I used to dread, only now it felt different, lighter. The rain had stopped sometime in the night. Outside, the world glistened, wet streets, trembling leaves, the faint smell of damp earth drifting through the open window. For a moment, I just stood there, watching the light stretch across the floorboards. It felt like a new day, not just for the world, but for me. Down the hallway, I could hear soft movement, the creak of floorboards, a muffled sniffle. Emily. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table in one of my old hoodies, hands wrapped around a mug of untouched coffee. Her eyes were red, but calm, like she'd finally run out of tears. "Morning," I said quietly. She looked up, startled by the softness in my voice. "Hey." We sat in silence for a minute, the only sound the slow tick of the clock above the stove. It felt almost like the old days, two people starting their morning together. Almost. I sat down across from her. She looked at me for a long time before saying, "I didn't sleep much." "Yeah," I said. "I heard." She smiled faintly, a sad, knowing smile. You always could tell. I took a deep breath, staring at the steam rising from my cup. "Emily, do you know what I realized these past months?" She looked up, eyes searching mine. "That sometimes love isn't enough to fix what's been broken. It's enough to forgive, but not enough to go back." Her lip trembled, "I know." We sat there in the gentle morning light, surrounded by ghosts of what used to be her favorite coffee mug, the picture on the wall, the scent of cinnamon from the candles she used to light on weekends. Every detail felt like a memory saying goodbye. She whispered, "You were always the good one, Mark." I shook my head. "No, I just learned to love through the hurt." Tears welled up again, but she wiped them away quickly. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You don't," I said softly, "but you have it anyway." That broke her. Her shoulders trembled, her breath came in uneven bursts, and for a moment she looked like that college girl I first fell in love with, scared, uncertain human. I reached across the table and took her hand. It wasn't a lover's touch. It was the touch of someone who'd finally let go of anger. "Emily," I said, "we can't go back to what we were. That version of us doesn't exist anymore. But I hope you find peace, truly." She nodded slowly, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. "And you?" "I already have." We stayed like that for a while, just holding hands across a kitchen table that had seen too many fights and too few apologies. The sun climbed higher, filling the room with gold. Eventually she stood. "I should go," she said quietly. I walked her to the door. She hesitated, looking around one last time at the walls, the couch, the photos. Then she turned to me. "I'll never stop loving you," she whispered. I smiled sadly. "Then love me enough to let me go." Her eyes softened, and for a brief moment she reached out, brushing her fingers against my cheek like she used to. Then she turned, walked down the steps, and out into the pale morning light. Milo whined softly by my leg as she got into her car. She glanced back once, just once, before driving away. The sound of the engine faded until it was just the wind again. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, the quiet pressing against me like a gentle reminder. And for the first time since that night in the driveway, it didn't hurt. It just was. Inside, I found the letter, the one I'd kept all this time. I unfolded it, added one final line at the bottom, and placed it in an envelope on the counter. "You were my greatest lesson, that love can break you and still set you free." Then I tucked it under the vase of fading roses, the same ones I'd bought for her months ago. Their petals had started to curl at the edges, but they were still beautiful in their own quiet way. As I watched the sunlight catch on the glass, I whispered, "Goodbye, Emily's." Milo barked softly, like he understood. I took a deep breath, stepped out into the new day, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not the kind that comes from getting answers, but the kind that comes from finally stopping the questions.